Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I apologize for the heavy breakdown. Um, uh, so basically, I'm just going to continue from where I left off. Sorry. So as we said earlier, that Islam permits trade and commerce. It is quite important that Islam permits certain things because it is geared towards the sustenance of human beings. So we ask ourselves first, is business haram or halal in Islam? Business, of course, is halal because Allah Azza wa Jal said, Allah has permitted trade and has forbidden usury interest. So the Sharia have requirements for every contract or business transactions. When it comes to the sales, the first is the contract itself. There is the legal capacity of contracting. There is the nature and the authority of the parties, which has to do with the offer and the acceptance. You can't force somebody to buy your product if the person did not have the full capacity or the consent. And also the second is the subject matter, which has to be lawful and has to be in existence at that particular point in time. Then we have the price, which need to be discussed and disclosed to the buyer. Then we have the possession, that is the subject of the sale must be in the possession of the person who was selling. Now, so Sharia in essence is just has to do with the contracts. Is basically of mutual consent and lawful contractual objective. So what is supposed to avoid in the business transaction is need to avoid usury, riba, uncertainty, maisha, which is gambling, and other prohibited elements, such as liquor and pork and other things. And basically, Islam has forbidden the indulgence into all these things that you are seeing on the screen, because any business that contains all these things is a haram business. One is the prohibition of riba. Riba need not to be in the business. Prohibition of uncertainty, that is uncertainty about either the subject matter or the availability of the subject matter and any other thing. And the prohibition of injustice and deceit. You cannot deceive people by just or you're trying to put something extra to what you are selling to look to have good quantity, while it is of course not something that is good. So, and the other one is the prohibition of dealing in forbidden items. Let's say you deal in selling alcohol and liquor and cigarette and marijuana and other things. It's all prohibited. And the consideration of the outcome, you need to consider the outcome of the business. If it is going to have a positive impact on the society as a whole, then of course it is permitted, simply because you look at the Maqasid al-Sharia, which has to do with the preservation of the deen, preservation of life, and the preservation of progeny and wealth, and so forth. So if the business outcome have a negative impact on all those things that I've listed, then the business becomes a haram business. And also you have to look at the return as is subject to risk, because in Islam you have to take risk when you are in business. You don't shift risks to only one person. Just as in the conventional aspect where you only shift risks to the, let's say, the person who's buying, or less in the loan aspect, you give a loan to a person and you ask the person, you have to pay the capital plus the interest, which is quite pushing, shifting the risk to only the person who's getting the loan. Now, so basically, we will just look at the first thing, which is usury, riba. Riba basically is prohibited in Islam. And in God's Quran, Allah Azza wa Jalla said, Allah has permitted trade and has forbidden interest. And a very long ayah also, he said, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, taqullaha wa dharu ma baqiya min riba in kuntum mu'minin. Or you believe, fear God and give up what remains of you, of usury, that is of interest, if you're indeed believers. So you have numerous verses in the glorious Quran which prohibit riba. So you, as a Muslim or as a businessman, you need to take consideration of all those things. And in the hadith of the Prophet also, he caused, he said, La'ana Rasulullah akila riba wa mukila. Prophet caused the one who gives riba, the one who takes it, the two witnesses, and the one who writes it down. So basically, even like if you are banking with a bank or doing business with a bank, and the banks give you a loan where it's also pay interest, is of course haram, because you are giving riba, and the Prophet caused those individuals. So we need to be very, very much careful about that. So riba also is found in the Bible. Almost all the Semitic religions, you will find the mention of usury in all their scriptures. So the Bible, you could find in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 18, verse 5 to 18, where it says, if a man is righteous and does what is lawful and right, does not lend at interest or take any increase, he's righteous, he shall solely live, says Lord. Now, this is clearly mentioned in the Bible, that indulgence in the usury is haram. And you could look at all these verses are all in the Bible. Let's say the last one, which is the book of Leviticus 7:37, which says, thou shalt not give him the money upon interest, nor lend him the victuals for increase. So you could see how all the Semitic religions treated the issue of interest. But what is riba in essence? One need to understand the concept of riba. Riba means extra, and it is of four kinds. That means an increase in anything that you lend, but not all items or all activities that have to do with economic materials. So first of all, we have to look at two kinds of riba, but they are also subdivided into, you have a riba al-duyun and you have a riba al-buyu'. Then a riba al-duyun means the interest, which is gain out of lending and borrowing. Excuse me. So this kind of riba is something that is extra amount of money over and above the principal of the loan. Either it is imposed by the person who's giving you the loan, or it is a promise by the borrower that he's going to pay. Even if all of them has to agree in mutual consent that I want to give you extra money on top of the loan, you give it to me. It's not permitted in Islam because it is considered usury. And riba al-duyun also is subdivided into, you have what you call riba al-qard, which is riba imposed from the beginning. From the beginning, you say, I give you this loan, then after of 100,000, when you're paying, you give me 110. The $10 there is usury. Then you have riba al-jahili, which is the riba of which you pay at the end of the loan. So we look at riba al-buyu, which is riba in the trading transactions, which is quite common nowadays, especially in the banking sector and even in our marketplaces. It is happening. It's not only limited to monetary values, but also to some commodities. So this kind of riba, it occurs out of exchange between two riba with materials. Riba with materials in essence means materials that if you indulge in them, there is a high chance that you indulge in riba. It's like what the Prophet mentioned, hadith, You said gold, silver, you have dates, barley, salt, and other materials. So there is no riba in trading transactions where a riba in material is exchanged with a non-riba with material. Now, let's say you exchange one mobile phone with 2 pens. That is not riba. You have one mobile phone with 2 pens. It's not riba because the materials are not riba items. Now, just like saying like money with a car or a non-riba materials exchange with another non-riba materials is also not riba. Let's say you exchange 2 pairs of shoes with 3 hats. That is not usury. Or a rubber with a refrigerator. That is also not usury. So in essence, you have material also subdivided into 2 as to the, when it comes to the medium of exchange, of which we use today as a medium of exchange, you have gold, which is silver, and shilling or euros or dollars in the Gambia, or sefa, or pound sterling, or Chinese yen. Those are all medium of exchange, and they consist of ribawi items. Or we have grains, which are rice, wheat, corn, meat like beef, mutton, chicken, fish, and other things. And these are all ribawi items. So we just look at the rules of exchange for ribawi materials, which is quite important. Look at it now. When exchanging goods, ribawi materials of the same kind, of the same basis, let's say 5 grams of 916 gold for 5 grams of 750 gold. What is the rule? The rule is supposed to be that the materials must be of the same weight, measurement, or number of units. And payment also must be on cash terms. On cash terms, meaning the payment has to be on spot, at the spot. Just like the Prophet ﷺ said, Yadam biyadin. That is hand to hand, that is on spot. Now, but the second rule also is the ribawi materials of different kinds of the same basis. The materials are of different kinds, but they're of the same basis. Let's say you 5 grams of gold for, this is ringgit money of ringgit Malaysia. This is the currency for Malaysia. You have 5 grams of gold for ringgit Malaysia of 200. Or ringgit Malaysia of 3,800 for US dollar of 1,000. The rule is supposed to be the difference in weights, measurement, or number of units are allowed. But the problem is the payment must still be on spot. That is at the cash basis. Now, I cannot give you Malaysia ringgit of 2,000 and I say, go tomorrow, you come and I give you the US dollar of 1,000. No, the payment has to be on spot. And the third rule is the ribawi materials of different kinds of different bases. The materials are of different kinds and have different bases. The 10 kilograms of dates for 1 gram of gold. The rules supposed to be no rules are imposed here because they are of difference in weights, measurement, or number of units. And either the payment could be deferred or there could be an excess. There is no problem in that. This one has no rules. So riba buyu subdivided into 2, which is riba fadal, riba of materials of the same kind, and you have riba nasiya, which is riba that has to do with time. Riba nasiya and SNS riba of time. Now, Islamic banking does not give out loans, so therefore riba out of lending and borrowing loan does not arise. To avoid involvement with riba in trading transactions, Islamic business must pay proper attention to the requirements that are buying. Because in today's business world, if you look at the conventional banks, they are quite different with the Islamic bank, because Islamic banks don't indulge into riba, while conventional bank does. So in the banking sector, look at this. The gold in treasury functions for liquidity, silver in treasury functions for liquidity, and the currencies of each country being considered as kind for hedging and payments. These are some of the issues you have in the banking sector. And when you look at in the deposit side, the deposits are like, let's say you go to the bank, you deposit money, they pay you an interest. That is how. And the financing side, also they charge you interest. The profit and loss sharing, they guarantee you that. And in Islam, you cannot guarantee that. So, and the penalties also that the banks also charge are also indulges in riba. Now, because of the second prohibited element, which is garar, garar simply means uncertainty. So the scholar said garar takes place where the consequences of a transaction remain unknown. You don't know the consequences of a transaction. Things are just dubious. So things are not clear to you. So that's why Imam Ibn Hazm, he said garar is a sale occurred where the purchaser does not know what he has bought and the seller does not know what he sold, which is quite funny. You sell what you don't know what you have sell, what you have sold, and the person bought something that you don't know what he have bought. So Islam has blocked all these means. Now, so Ibn Qayyim described garar in a subject as when the subject matter, the vendor is not in position to hand over to the buyer, whether the subject matter exists or not. So, like if you're selling something and you don't have the powers or the mandate to be given the subject matter, let's say it is a car or a mobile phone, you don't have the access or the power to be given to the person who is buying, then it also endorses in garar. Now, so in summary, garar arises when it is not known whether the subject matter exists, the subject matter is of existence, or if it exists at all, whether it can be handed over to the buyer. If you don't have the clear mind that whether you can able to hand over the item that you're selling to the person, then it is also considered uncertainty. And if the knowledge affects the identification of beginners or the species of the subject matter, also constitute garar. So garar in essence is divided into two. We have garar yasir and garar fahis. Minor garar, slight, which is slight garar. And this garar type of uncertainty, the scholars have said, is quite permitted up to a certain extent. So garar fahis, which is a major garar, that one is serious garar. That garar is surely not permitted in the business, in the Islamic business world. So the garar that causes a contract to be invalid is the one that we call the major garar. Now, it's the one that we call the major garar. So the major garar arises out of one of the following two. One, either the asset or the merchandise does not exist. Either what you are selling does not exist. If you want to sell a phone, the phone is not existing as of now. You want to sell a mobile, let's say a shoe, and the shoe is not existing as of now. You cannot sell that item because it is not existing. It constitutes uncertainty. And the asset cannot be delivered. You are not sure whether you can able to deliver the asset to the person who's purchasing. It constitutes uncertainty. And the asset is not according to specifications. If the asset is not what has been specified by the person who's purchasing, it constitutes uncertainty. Now, and the modern example for garar is you look at it in the modern world and the modern context, how the business operates and how it indulges in the garar. You say the sale of debt. Sometimes you see people, let's say in the conventional aspect is quite much rampant there, that is selling of debts and the sale of items without label and proper specifications. All these things constitute garar. So why did Islam prohibit garar? Because Islam, if it prohibits something, there is always a wisdom behind that. So the rationale behind the prohibition of garar is to ensure full disclosure of information and provide transparency between the contracting parties, and also the avoidance of exploitation and injustice and enmity among the people, because Islam blocks all those ways. And because simply in the business world, Islam wants to bring in both the consumers and the buyers together so they can have happy family and happy business environment. And the classical example for garar include runaway animal. You cannot sell a runaway animal, an animal that is in the bush and you don't have access to it. You sold it to somebody. That is garar because you don't know where you can able to access that animal. And the fish in the river, you cannot say I sell that fish in the river to you because you don't have that access to the fish. And you cannot a bird that is flying in the air also, you cannot sell it because you don't have it, you don't purchase it. And sometimes it will be quite difficult for you to have the bird. So of course, all these things are just dubious matters. That's why Islamic Sharia prohibit all those things in the business trade. And the jurists also agreed. The jurists agreed that garar should be avoided in commercial exchange contracts. Commercial exchange contracts, garar also supposed to be avoided. So we go to the third one, which is gambling. And gambling, you'll find in the Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Yes, alunaka anil khamri wal maisir. كل فيهما إثم كبير ومنافع للناس وإثمهما أكبر من نفعهما They asked you, Prophet ﷺ, concerning alcohol and drink. Say to them, in them is a great sin and some benefit for men, but the sin of it is greater than the benefit. This ayah was actually revealed before the prohibition of gambling and wine. Now, this ayah was revealed before that, but there is an ayah in Surah Al-Ma'idah where Allah said, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, إنما الخمر والميسر والأنثاب والأظلام رجس من عمل الشيطان فاجتنبوه لعلكم تفلحون. That indeed intoxicants, gambling, and so on and so forth are all the handiworks of Satan. So refrain if solely want to be successful. So of course, Islam has prohibited all these alcoholic drinks. So myself, which is gambling, means easily you obtain something without making effort. You obtain something without making effort. So gambling is just a betting or charging something that will be forfeited if one fails to obtain greater gain and hopes for in the near future. And specific speculation is not gambling, because some jurists say that speculation is prohibited, but the contracts involving speculation are still valid. That's what the jurists say. So gambling involves, what does gambling entail in essence? Gambling simply means acquisition of wealth by chance. You acquire wealth by chance. Let's say, look at this lottery houses where men and even old men and women also, where you see them queuing in these lotteries to go and make gambling so that you get money without effort by chance. You give them $5 and you're expecting $1,000. You just sit and wait, which is quite quite not good at all. So the second point is no exchange of counter values. You don't exchange things of counter values. And no efforts by the parties. If you don't make any effort, surely the one that you get will be prone to scrutiny. So contract that involves these elements could be prohibited in Sharia because they have gambling. Now, you go to lock drawers, they're all things of gambling, and Islam has prohibited gambling in all those things. So investment in prohibited elements is quite important. You don't invest or you don't make sale, you don't make business on prohibited elements, because any contract which involves a prohibited property is a null and void contract. Prohibited in the sense that the Sharia says not to it. Let's say you're selling marijuana, you're selling pork, you're selling liquor, and all other things that are harmful to man. And contracts involve wine, intoxicant pigs, let's say blood, idols, crosses, and statues are not valid, simply because the lawgiver has forbidden all those things. And Prophet ﷺ said, Inna Allah wa Rasulahu harrama baya khamr. That the Prophet ﷺ, Allah and his apostle made illegal the trade of alcohol, and the dead animals, pigs, and the idols. So this is where you get it from, that investment in prohibited elements or investment in intoxicants, pigs, bloods are all haram. And the Quran also forbids such things. Just like Allah says in the Quran, that Allah has forbidden dead meat, blood, flesh of swine, and so on and so on. So forbidden things are just, you can see, as in the screen. You can see the pork, alcohol, tobacco, weapons, materials promoting nudity and vulgarity. These are all haram things. Sometimes you go to the bars, you see them promoting nudity and promoting promiscuity. All such things are not halal in the Islamic business arena. So the same thing that the Prophet ﷺ also speak about these things, about prohibited elements. The Prophet ﷺ said, when Allah prohibits a thing, he prohibits giving and receiving the price of it as well. Like Allah Azza wa Jal prohibited drinking of alcohol. He also prohibited the giving and the receiving of its price. That means you cannot sell it. It's haram. So injustice and deceit also is a prohibited element in the Islamic business, of which Allah Azza wa Jal said, he said, do not eat each other's properties with injustice. And Prophet ﷺ said, injustice will be darkness on the day of judgment. So dhulm in business is not something that is praiseworthy, because it is deceitful. Let's say you want to sell something to the person, you make the item to look so nice, while in the real context, it is of course a bad item. This is so deceitful. Or sometimes some will be selling, let's say someone will be selling pepper, and sometimes they'll use color note because they have the same color to make sure that they have great quantity, which is haram in Islam. And some will be some will be selling milk, and sometimes they will add water. All these are deceitful, so you cannot indulge in all those things. So the types of injustice in Islam, all the deceitful things, are the hiding the defects. You cannot hide the defects. If you want to sell something to somebody, you need to tell the person the defects of the item. If the person goes and buy, then it's fine. But if you hide the defects, then this is prohibited in Islam. And increasing the price illegitimate ways, or attributing goods to false manner. You cannot just increase price by illegitimate ways. That is constitutes deceitfulness. And you negotiate on orders whilst the orders are negotiated. Let's say I want to buy something from Al-Amin, let's say a mobile phone, and also you also come here, so you want to negotiate. This is of course not something that is good. Al-Amin is negotiating with me to sell it to me, and at the same time Al-Amin also is negotiating with somebody else to sell the person the same phone. This will bring about chaos, and sometimes it result into fight. And monopoly also, Islam also bans monopoly. Business of monopoly, you being the only existing person of business in the market, and you're trying to make sure you ban all other people from entering the market by just trying to impose the entrance or increasing the entrance cost. It is all not something permitted in Islam. So risk sharing also. In Islam, whenever you did business, you have to be ready to share risk, because return is subject to risk. Your profit is subject to risk. This is why the profit in Islam is the capital you contribute, the effort you put, and the risks you have. So risk in Islamic business transaction is to be shared. You cannot just transfer risk to one person. It's supposed to be shared to all the parties. That is why you see in the conventional aspect, when you take a loan, they just shift the risk to you, which is not something permissible. So risk is supposed not to be transferred. Yeah. So risk sharing also, you say the capital wealth applied to create more wealth, and creation of more wealth can be done in either two ways: either risk capital, which is capital is rewarded for its participation, or loan capital. Loan capital dictates its price for participation in transaction. But you cannot just have money just like that, and you'll be shifting risks only to the person who is the one you gave the capital to. So characteristics of Sharia in essence are: one, freedom from usury. Islamic business in essence is supposed to have these characteristics: one, freedom from riba; two, freedom from gara, that is uncertainty; three, freedom from dara, that is harm. Any business transaction that harms the people or the environment is haram. And freedom to contract. The contracting parties have to be free. You don't force people to purchase your items, or you don't force them to sell items to you. And the other one is freedom from price control and manipulation. You're supposed to be free from manipulation of all the prices, to set the price that you wish. And freedom from qimar and maisha, that is gambling. Freedom from such. The business is supposed to be free and totally clean from gambling. And entitlement to transact at fair price. The fair price is supposed to be set. You have the entitlement to transact at a fair price, not a price that will lay burden on the people. And you have a system grounded on moral and ethics. It means whatever you're selling must be grounded on moral and ethics. And promotion of brotherhood. Business promotes brotherhood to the people. It's not a business that is bringing about chaos and causing all lot of uncertainties, causing all lot of confusion in the market and other things. And also entitlement to equal, adequate, and accurate information. Information need to be shared between the buyers and the sellers. There must be accurate information in the market. And the last one is to promote maslaha, that is public benefit. Promote public benefit. So if your business transactions or business dealings contradicts the divine rulings of Allah Azza wa Jalla, that is the preservation of the day, preservation of want preservation of family and other things, then your business is blameworthy. So basically, this is just a presentation that I have for you today, and we hope to be meeting more. Thank you all for your kind attention. وإن كان ما غير ذلك فمن نفسي وسيطان والله ورسوله بريء من السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.